Welcome to part 2 of my myQ garage door upgrade. In the previous video, I went over the basic installation and setup of my new ratgdo32 garage door controllers, which I wanted so I could improve upon the functionality, or lack of functionality, I guess, of my existing myQ garage door openers. I did show some of the basic functions to make sure they worked, but in this video, what I want to go into more depth about is what my goals were with this project and the automations in Home Assistant that I came up with to accomplish them. There were basically 5 things I wanted out of this. I wrote them down. Number 1, quick local access to the garage doors from my phone. Chamberlain's myQ app requires the internet to work, even when I'm at home. And their app can also take a while to load or respond, which is probably an issue with their servers. The Home Assistant app, though, pretty much responds instantly, even when I'm away from home, since it's connecting directly to my hub in my house. Also, local access also means my automation should be faster and more reliable. Number 2 was HomeKit integration. Now, I briefly touched on this in the previous video, but I'm not a huge fan of Apple's HomeKit. I've found in my testing over the years that it just isn't a very reliable smart home platform, and devices will often show up as unresponsive. But what I did want was voice control through Siri from my phone, or especially my Apple Watch, which I thought would be great just for convenience when I'm outside the house or if I have my hands full. And also Apple CarPlay. My new Miata doesn't have HomeLink built in, and I thought it would be nice to be able to control the door from the infotainment system and not have to keep the garage door opener in the car, which is just a little thing. So those 2 things I basically accomplished just by installing the ratgdo32s, but I still thought it was worth mentioning, and I have had 0 disconnects or any issues in the weeks I've been using them. All right, so now the more complicated things. Number 3 was reminders if I left my door open, which technically this is probably the number 1 thing I've always wanted. So let me go into Home Assistant and show you how I set this up. I go to Create Automation. So I'm going to start with the reminders. So we're going to keep this pretty simple for right now. I'm going to add a new trigger. And let's say you want to be alerted if it's 11 o'clock at night and you left your door open. Time. All right, so we could do 11 p.m. Okay. And add a condition of, let's do right garage door is open. And in my case, I want to know if my left garage door is also open. Then I can send a notification to my phone that says garage door is open. Okay, so let me close these because there is one thing I'm missing. This wasn't obvious to me at first, just because I'm new to Home Assistant and how the automations function, but an automation in Home Assistant is triggered when any of the triggers listed under when happen. So I could add another time. Let's say, yeah, just let me know at midnight. Okay, so if it's either 11 p.m. or midnight, this automation will be triggered. However, the optional conditions in the middle here, those both have to match before it will continue. So in my case, I want to know if either door is left open, not if both doors are left open. But we can do that with a building block. And in this case, it's an OR statement. If you've done any computer programming, this will be familiar to you. If not, it just says test any of the conditions to be true. So in this case, we just want this to fire off if either garage door is left open. Hopefully that makes sense. And then it'll send the notification. So let's say you also want to be notified if you leave home. We'll add a new trigger. In this case, we're going to go down to Entity. And this is a nitpick with Home Assistant, is that I don't always know when it makes sense to reference the device or the individual entities. That's just probably the learning curve with Home Assistant that other smart home hubs don't seem to have. But regardless, we want to know if the state changes with our home. So by default, there's a zone in Home Assistant called Home. You can set up as many other zones, I think, as you want. But in this case, Home is what we're looking for. And apparently, I only learned this by digging through the Home Assistant forums, a zone is also a number that represents the number of people in the zone. So in this case, I want to know if it goes from any number to 0. I only want to be notified if the last person has left the home. For most people, that's probably all you really want. But let's say you're like me and you come home and you want to remember to close your garage door. Maybe you get distracted, you're on the phone, you just forget about it. But it's just the opposite. So we can go in here and say when home changes from 0. And in this case, it probably makes sense to wait a certain number of minutes, like give yourself 20 minutes to get in the house and put your bags down or whatever. And then if you've still left your door open, it'll let you know. Okay, so that was the notifications. I could have just stopped there and been so happy, but why not go further? So number 4 was syncing up the door lights. By default, when I open one garage door, only that light will turn on. So one of the simple things I'd like to do is make it so that if either door opens, both lights will come on. Also, right now, if I trip the beam down here, the light will come on. What would be nice is if they would both come on. And this side, which has the wall mount garage door opener, the light doesn't come on when I trip the beam. Yeah, so I would like to make those work together also. And the same could be said for the motion sensor as well. Essentially what I wanted was that no matter how I entered the garage, I just wanted both lights to come on at the same time. And finally, number 5 was I wanted both lights to turn off at the same time, which I actually thought was optional, but what I learned was that if I turned the lights on with Home Assistant, they just seemed to stay on. So I needed to set up some logic in Home Assistant to turn them off anyway. Right now, the ceiling mounted garage door opener has a control panel with adjustable times that range from 1.5 to 4.5 minutes. But the wall mounted garage door opener seems to stay on for about 9 to 10 minutes, and I don't have any control over it. So now with Home Assistant, I can make them turn off at the same time. And to make it even better, when I close both doors and nobody's in the garage, I'd love to just have them both turn off immediately. Because my garage does have windows, and I think it just looks weird when the lights are left on for a long time, especially when they're not the same times. So let's hop back into Home Assistant, and I'll show you my light automations and some of the little tricks that I had to learn to make them work properly. So this one's a bit more straightforward. So these first two, right garage door obstruction, started detecting problem, and the left garage door obstruction started detecting a problem. That's the little beam at the bottom there. So if either of those gets tripped by me walking through it, both lights will turn on. Same with motion being detected, or if either door opens. So what happens then is I turn on both lights, I wait for 5 minutes, and then I turn off both lights. Here's the trick with this one. It's this delay. So what happens is if this automation gets triggered by any of these conditions, it'll turn the lights on. While it's waiting, let's say it gets triggered again, whether by motion or I open the other door, etc. There could still be the original automation sitting there waiting. And what happens is that when these 5 minutes are up, the lights might turn off too soon, or you start to run into a situation where the light goes on, the light goes off, etc. So again, what I figured out by digging through the forums and the documentation for Home Assistant is up under these dots, you go to change mode. By default, it's set to single, which is normally fine. But in this case, I want it set to restart. So what happens is, if I'm walking around in the garage, for instance, it's going to keep triggering this automation. But as long as it's set to restart, it cancels the previous one. So in essence, what happens is the lights just stay on for as long as motion is detected in the garage. And as soon as I walk out, then after that 5 minutes, the lights will turn off. And if I walk back into the garage during that 5 minutes, it's fine. It cancels that automation, starts over again. It has been working perfectly. So that's the trick with that automation. And finally, when I close the garage doors. So in this case, I want this triggered if either of the doors is closed. And for this one, all of these conditions have to be met. So both doors need to be closed, and both sensors are not detecting motion. So in the event that I closed the door with me in the garage, I don't want it turning the light off on me. So hopefully it would still be detecting motion. I'm sure there's some edge cases where this might not work, but it's been doing all right for now, and I'm happy with it. So once those conditions are met, I just turn off both lights. As simple as that. So in practice, what I've been seeing is that when I come home and close my garage door, the lights just turn off immediately as soon as the door's closed. There is a trick with this one too to get it to work reliably. And that trick is when either of the doors are closed, I have it wait 5 seconds before it checks the rest of these conditions. Before I did that, I think what was happening is that sometimes it was still registering motion, or maybe the default connections in the garage door opener were overriding Home Assistant, because sometimes the light would turn off but then immediately come back on, which isn't what I want. But since adding a little bit of a delay to these rules, it has so far been working perfectly. Again, if somebody has a better suggestion on how I can handle that, I'd love to know it. There's a lot about Home Assistant that I don't know, but these rules for the past few weeks have just been working out fantastic, and is all I've wanted out of my smart garage door openers. Okay, so I'm standing here in my garage. I'm going to go ahead and close the garage door. And after about 5 seconds, as long as I don't move, both lights should turn off. And if I go ahead and open either of the doors, both overhead lights will turn on. Hey, turn off the garage lights. So now if I trip the obstruction sensor, it should turn both lights on. Yeah, that one's always a little delayed, but that's fine. So yeah, I think that wraps up my ratgdo and Home Assistant project. I think I've accomplished everything that I wanted to, and none of the stuff I'm doing now was possible with Chamberlain's myQ app. And I've probably said this multiple times now, but I've been very happy with the results. I really wish I had done it sooner, and I really can't recommend them enough. And you don't need a myQ door opener to use them. Even if you have an old dumb garage door opener, you could still make use of these. And you don't even have to use Home Assistant. You could integrate it directly into Apple HomeKit and just skip the additional hubs and keep it simple. So yeah, anyway, if you've made it through this video, I really hope you got something out of it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. All right, that's it.